Now from Dublin is the former Irish Prime Minister Bertie Ahern. Mr Ahern, thank you very much indeed for being with us. This, of course, has come about because after Brexit, the UK will not be in the European Union. Ireland will continue to be in the European Union. Do you think we're getting any closer to resolving this early and important issue of the border on the island of Ireland?
No, I'm afraid not, Adam. There's been very little progress on that issue for the last 12 months. And that's why I think we've these various suggestions floating around all of the time. Of course, I agree with what Philip Hammond has just said there, that we want a seamless border. We want it like it's been now for the last decade or so, where there's free movement, where there's no security checks, there's no watchtowers. There's no technology examinations of what's going back and forward, and I think that's the way everybody on the island of Ireland wants it. The difficulty is that, as I've said time out of number, that the experts in this area say that's impossible. They say that if the land border between the United Kingdom and the European Union in the future, post-Brexit, is the border that goes across between north and south, then you have to have checks on it. Now, that hasn't changed, and the source of that has continuously been Pascal Lamy, the head of WTO and a former Commissioner for Trade. So until we see some resolution of that, I think everybody means well. Everybody is saying, yes, that's what we want. But there's no certainty about the issue, and it is a worrying issue for all kinds of reasons. People do not want to damage the island economy from a business point of view. People who are working in the north and from the south are travelling every morning and back in the evening, and vice versa. People who are travelling, tourists who are now increasingly going around the whole island of Ireland. So for all of these reasons, we want to keep it as it's been since the Good Friday Agreement, or maybe more correctly, since 2007 when we got a working executive. So it is of major concern, and while there's a number of suggestions...
Do you think, though, it is credible, the alternative being proposed by the Irish government, of course a different party from yours, now that instead of having a border in the island of Ireland, there should be a sea border basically between mainland Britain and all of Ireland, north and south? Is that a credible proposal?
Well, I have to say, in some, I've done so many discussions on this around the country over the last 12 months. At some stages, I have said that, but it's always been very tongue-in-cheek, I'd have to say, because firstly, you would have to get an agreement by all parties, and I do not see unionist parties ever agreeing to that suggestion. So I said any time that I said it was only in the absence of finding an alternative solution. So I don't think you get agreement on it. But I think until we find that there is a resolution to it, and quite frankly, Adam, I have to be honest about it, I don't see it, how you can find an easy solution. Of course, the other one that's said by some people, well, you know, you have unity in the country and then that solves it, but that has all the ramifications that's not possible at this stage either. So we're stuck with a position which is the first phase of negotiations, how we can have a seamless border where everyone can move about, and it's still being the land border between the EU and the United Kingdom. And there has been no paper, no document that's in the public domain at least, that's put forward a credible solution to that. There's lots of goodwill, there's no doubt about that. I think the British government, the Irish government, the parties in the north, from both unionists and nationalists, have all said they would like to see it, but we do not seem to have moved into a space where Michel Barnier can give us any solution.
Because in practical terms, it would seem that the choice is either a border, as you say, that sea border, which certainly unionists would see as effectively going a step further to a united Ireland, or possibly, and I know this has been floated in some quarters, that Ireland might have to follow the UK out of the European Union?
Well, that's not going to happen. There is no support, thankfully, for us to get involved in an act of insanity. There's no prospect of the Republic of Ireland leaving the European Union. As I think I said before to you, Adam, we're mad, but we're not that mad. And we're not going to do that now, in the future, and never.
But equally, as you say yourself, if it's unacceptable to have a border between Northern Ireland and Britain, that really leaves no alternative but a return to a hard border between North and South, doesn't it?
Well, I think this is my real concern, Adam. That we don't want a hard border, but how can you move goods? We've seen the issues in the last few days. Just let's take practical issue that you've reported very well on Sky News during the week about the issue of foods coming in from the United States and the issue of the chickens. Like, you remember what we had to do in the foot and mouth case, where we had to seal the border during that period back in 2001. And then we had to try and work as a whole island to prevent foot and mouth spreading. So there's plenty of experiences and plenty of issues where the difficulties of having a border that requires checks, but at the same time I understand the EU position. How can you have the land border that has no checks? And it's no good people saying that there's an easy solution. And I can understand that's why people say, well, yeah, unite the country and that solves it. Yeah, that's easy said, very difficult to do. Or people saying, and as I've said myself, put the border off the coast, but I've said it tongue in cheek. So there is no realistic solution that has been put forward yet. And I really worry that is some of the suggestions that have been put out in the last year, and from European sources too, have they looked at the constitutional position? Have they looked at the sheer difficulties of the simplistic thing of saying we want no border and we can do that, but it's still the land border between the UK and Europe? I really worry that the issue has not been examined to the extent that it requires, looking at the legal and constitutional issues, the trade issues, the ramifications for it. And this is one of my criticisms, that a year has gone by and very little has happened on it. And I really think we should have been trying to get a hard position negotiated between the Irish government and UK government and put that position to Europe over the last 12 months. That, as far as I can see, has not happened. I think that was a mistake on all sides, and we now need to rectify it. And now there's only a matter of a few months to rectify it before we move to the second stage. So I'm afraid people are going to have to spend some of their summer fast-tracking this a bit better than it has for the last 12 months.
Do you welcome this idea of a transition phase? Because, of course, that could delay the final decision about the Irish border, along with many other things, possibly for another 3 years or so.
Yeah, well, there'll have to be a transition. I mean, there is no possibility, looking at the more general issues, Adam, there is no possibility of this all being wrapped up in a 2-year period. Effectively, when people come back from holidays in September, you're talking about the entire agreement is meant to be finished before it goes to the ratification process by October of next year. Now, definitely pigs will fly if that happens. It's not going to happen. So there'll have to be a transition period, 2, 3, 4 years. If you look at trade deals all over the world and look at what it's taken to negotiate the deals with Canada or Japan or deals that have happened over the last 30 or 40 years, it is impossible to have a substantive trade deal that covers all aspects negotiated. If you look at the average, it would be a period of 5 to 7 years. But so if everyone even works as hard as they're committed to doing, and I accept that they are, to try and do it in 2 years, a transition period of 2 years I'm talking about. Now, there's no possibility of it being wrapped up in my view, and I think everybody else who's looked at this in a serious way have been wrapped up by 2019. But even a 2 year on top of that, I don't see that. I think a more realistic period would be 4 or 5 years. That's if the UK stick to their position of pulling out totally of the single market, pulling out of the customs union. I still don't understand that's in a good negotiating position. I would say respectively for the UK to pull out of the customs union and totally out of the single market. I just don't understand it. I don't get it. I've tried my best to read it and brief myself on it. But if they do that, I think a transition period of 5 years would be very fast.
Bertie Ahern, thank you very much indeed for joining us.